All right, today we are cracking open an 1800-year-old case file. Our subject? Cyprian of Carthage. He was a bishop, a martyr, and a star witness from the early church. And you know what? His testimony is still being debated, still being cross-examined in theological disputes to this very day.
So, let me ask you this. If the beliefs of the early church were put on trial, who would you call to the stand? Well, the source material we're digging into today puts forward a really compelling candidate, Cyprian. So for this explainer, we're going to treat his extensive writings like evidence and see exactly what this star witness has to say.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll get to know the witness and set the scene. Then, we're going to establish his credibility. Why should we even listen to him? After that, we'll dive into the core of his testimony. Then we'll see how that testimony is used by different sides today. And finally, we'll reach a verdict on his legacy.
Okay, so first things first, we absolutely have to place our witness in time, because with a case like this, context is everything.
This timeline really shows you just how critical his timing was. See, Cyprian is writing after the apostles are gone, but well before the first huge church council at Nicaea. This puts him in this uniquely formative and frankly pretty turbulent period. His writings give us an incredible snapshot of the church before it was defined by those later empire-wide councils.
So, who exactly was this guy? Before we can hear his testimony, we have to establish his credibility. I mean, what made his voice so influential in the first place?
Just look at the life this slide lays out. Cyprian wasn't some quiet monk hiding away from the world. Nope. He was a famous, super wealthy public speaker in Carthage, a major Roman city. Then, he converts later in life, gives away his entire fortune, and just a couple of years after that, the people are demanding that he become their bishop. This tells you he was a practical leader, a man of action forged in the real world, not some ivory tower.
And this is the final and maybe the most powerful piece of his credibility. In 258 AD, during a period of intense Roman persecution, Cyprian was martyred. For him, this wasn't some abstract debate. He literally sealed his testimony with his own life, and that gives his words an undeniable, permanent weight.
All right, we've established the witness and his credibility. Now it's time to get into the heart of his testimony. What did Cyprian actually teach?
This is probably his most famous and definitely his most controversial statement. Outside the church, there is no salvation. For Cyprian, the church wasn't just some optional club for believers. It was the singular, visible, and necessary vessel. To be connected to Christ, you had to be connected to his church. It's a foundational claim that really underpins everything else he taught.
So, if there's only one church, how does it stay unified? For Cyprian, the answer was the cathedra Petri, the chair of Peter. He taught that to guarantee unity, Christ established a single point of authority on the apostle Peter. This wasn't just some vague hope for unity. For Cyprian, it was a concrete principle rooted in the office of the Bishop of Rome.
And, Cyprian's writings also give us this incredibly detailed picture of sacramental life way back in the mid-200s. He talks about baptism, including for infants, as necessary for salvation. He describes the Eucharist not as a symbol, but as a literal, true, and full sacrifice. And he's crystal clear that sins must be confessed to a priest. To find testimony this specific, this early, it's just a goldmine for historians and theologians.
Okay, so let's fast forward. Let's bring this case into the modern courtroom. How is this 3rd century testimony actually used today? First, we'll look at the argument that it provides a clear line of continuity with modern Catholic teaching.
And Cyprian, well, he puts the question bluntly himself. Can he be confident he is in the church who deserts the chair of Peter? Wow. In his view, abandoning the See of Rome was exactly the same as leaving the church itself. He even explicitly called Rome the principal church where priestly unity came from.
So when you lay it all out, you really start to see how these specific beliefs line up. The source material presents Cyprian as this powerful early witness for doctrines like the primacy of the Bishop of Rome, the real presence, confession to a priest, and even a state of purification after death that sounds an awful lot like purgatory. And on top of all that, he quotes from books like Wisdom and Maccabees like they're scripture.
But hey, every witness has to face cross-examination, right? And that exact same testimony from Cyprian is also presented as a major challenge to some foundational Protestant principles.
And this gets right to the heart of it. In Cyprian's world, authority is like a three-legged stool. You've got scripture, apostolic tradition, and the visible church hierarchy.
Now, that is fundamentally different from the principle of sola scriptura, or scripture alone, which argues the Bible is the only infallible rule of faith. You can see right away how Cyprian's entire framework just operates on a completely different set of assumptions.
Now, this is where the cross-examination gets really interesting. Cyprian famously clashed with Pope Stephen over rebaptizing heretics. Cyprian said their baptisms were invalid. The Pope said they were valid. So critics of papal authority often point to this and say, see, even Cyprian rejected the Pope's power? But the source material highlights a crucial distinction. While Cyprian fiercely disagreed with the Pope's ruling, he never seems to have denied the Pope's authority to make that ruling. And the irony is, in the end, the Pope's position is what became the official teaching of the Church, an outcome that actually strengthened Rome's authority.
So, after hearing all the evidence, after hearing the arguments from both sides, what's the final verdict on the legacy of Cyprian of Carthage?
Well, at the end of the day, no matter how you interpret his testimony, one thing is absolutely clear. Cyprian's writings are an invaluable time capsule. They give us one of the sharpest, clearest views we have into the life, the struggles, and the core beliefs of the Church in that crucial era right before Nicaea.
And this really sums up his complex legacy, doesn't it? He is, all at the same time, a powerful witness for certain ancient doctrines, a source of endless theological debate for others, and above all, a passionate champion for the visible unity of the Church. The man wasn't simple, and neither is his legacy.
Which leaves us with one last thought. Does a witness like Cyprian actually give us definitive answers that settle every debate? Or does his testimony, with all its messiness and complexity, just force us to ask better, deeper questions about faith, authority, and history itself? Now that is something worth thinking about.